Hello everyone, and welcome to this audio podcast. In this series, the erudition of Colladax. This is a Colladax rupture. The Colladax feature. This is the Colladax feature one. Under this, in as a chartered edition and an evidence-based perspective. This is a an audio podcast. An audio podcast, short, and an audio podcast aligned with another Storm Lobostics production. In this audio podcast, there'll be just a sort of a sort of a snippet really of a sort of a research workshop that had taken place in 2020, sort of retrospectively, and so here goes. So this was a research a research workshop in around funding. This workshop covered several areas, including breaking down an application, features of a good research outline, how to search for funding opportunities and funding organizations, why are research projects or outlines rejected, assessing bids, building a case for research, building a case for research, uh, building a case for research, defining a research profile, framing a bid, writing and being directive, and how to create or develop or how a funding research outline should have an impact. Attending this particular workshop was had been pretty helpful, pretty useful. It also allowed the opportunity to understand what makes and brings sort of value in research and approach to grant writing. I was in sort of retrospectively, this was particularly intriguing in features, in particularly intriguing, especially wherein the workshop outlined sort of the features of what entails what encompasses or embosses a good research outline, and writing and being again and writing and being directive, um, and here here there was during this particular workshop, there was the opportunity to learn how it is important that researchers should have a portfolio or a track record of research publishing in areas of expertise as well. This research workshop was useful, in the sense also that allowed a learning about what makes a good scientific case, and I learned there was a learning about the important that teams have a mutual responsibility. Experience, knowledge, and roles in a team should be transparent, and and um, in line with this research workshop, I'm going to highlight I'm going to highlight a bit of an overview in context of a particular a particular reflection a reflection model that a particular reflection model that had been implemented as well. So on learning, I there was an identification in around a particular reflective model, a reflective model, known and referred to as Mezirow's model, from 1978. And Mezirow's model is linked with as a link with a transformative learning. Um, Mezirow's model, from 1978, also prompts a self examination assessment assessment and sort of alienation, sharing, exploring, and building competence, and plan for action, acquiring acquiring knowledge, and trying new roles, and to reintegrate. The Mezirow model from the Mezirow model 1978 had helped focus dilemmas and critically think, relating back or reflecting back to colleagues and collaborators in similar scenarios to move forward. And using or implementing Mezirow's model from 1978, there was a general learning that it is important to appraise efforts through critical thinking and provide a sound case for funding, introducing concepts and new ideas. Mezirow's model from 1978 encouraged sort of a cognitive transformation, wherein colleagues and collaborators, for example, bounce ideas off each other, bounce ideas off one another, or of each other, and become and thus in that and this and thus where Mezirow's model encourages a basis in around wherein there is a bouncing of ideas off one another, is where ideas then can become inspired as well. Mezirow's model from 1978 was also helpful because it allowed the importance of again of critical thinking and building a case for grant writing, and also wherein implementing Mezirow's model from 1978 also allowed a learning in and around why bids are rejected, and also how competitive funding can be depending on research calls, depending on research calls, and also in about the advantages from research, advantages in around research. For example, how do investigators in around how investigators or researchers researchers sort of gain advantage on what would be and also what would be the sort of scale of advantage, and what can be learnt from putting forward sort of funding applications in around, for example, the methodology and the policy aspects. Having had past experience or retrospective, having had sort of retrospective experience searching out funding opportunities, and have been successful, and where there has been a sort of there has been some success on some grant applications, some awards. For example, this workshop, this research funding workshop, this funding for research workshop was a good sort of good opportunity, a good opportunity for as sort of a reminder, and also wherein thereafter there were wherein as part of the reflective basis, there was a learning in around how to how in around where wherein it wherein from a research perspective, how it would be important it will be important to identify opportunities to work on sort of larger grants, and how this would be sort of one of the main sort of bases as in context in context of research and wherein in line with the Mezirow's model again from 1978, where it was quite obliging. It allowed to actively or proactively acknowledge sort of the basis or the fundamentals, really the fundamentals of how sort of retrospectively where researchers or investigators, for example, can easily be 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 can be of the view can be of the negative view, really, that that anything that has been done has not has not allowed a sense of has not prompted or encouraged a sense of progression. And so thus the Mezirow's model from 1978 allowed a sort of a reflective basis in around different aspects of funding of around different aspects of reflective practice, but also in around where this particular workshop was around funding and around funding for aspects of research. Now, the Mezirow's model can be identified in works by Christie and team in 2015, and also by works by Mezirow from 1981 as well, and Mezirow in works from 2006. There will be with this sort of audio podcast overview online. There will be some resources available for any sort of listeners or viewers in around this sort of for anyone who would find it who would want to know about who would want to know about Mezirow's reflective model, which was particularly useful in as part of this sort of workshop that took place sort of retrospectively. So thank you for tuning in on this audio podcast short in this audio podcast in as part of this audio podcast series, the erudition of Colladax, the Colladax rupture. And this has been an audio podcast aligned to the Colladax Feature 1. This is a chartered edition and another a chartered edition and an evidence-based perspective, and another Storm Robotics production. Thank you.